So you've just been listening to the audiobook of Deadline, which was written by me, Steph McGovern. But more importantly, Faye Marsay is the voice of the book. And Faye, do you know what? I am so buzzing that you agreed to do this, because you and I have got quite similar upbringings.
We do.
You know, you're from the same part of the country as me.
Yeah.
So A, thank you very much for doing it. But B, what did it feel like for you?
I mean, thank you for having me first, because, you know, it's like with my career, a lot of the stuff that we do on television, there's a certain way of doing it, and there's a certain way of kind of planning how you're going to approach it, obviously. But with this, it was so nice to be in a room on my own, kind of creating in a way that I got sort of free rein to voice the characters, but it was much more sort of in my head, and I could just speak it, which is very different from being on telly when you've got to think about angles and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of, I don't know, feeling like it was quite freeing for me. And it was just me on my own. And what I loved about it was the dialect. Like, I never see our dialect written down, ever.
Yeah, the Teesside.
The Teesside, yeah, the northeastern. And, you know, in the northeast, like, you've got Newcastle, Sunderland and Middlesbrough. Then you've got North Yorkshire, where, you know, I grew up on the border of North Yorkshire. My man's from Whitby. So I have a bit of that kind of farmery kind of vibe going on there. But my dad is very much Teesside. So seeing it written down.
Yeah.
I can't think, you know, it wouldn't sound right if it wasn't in our accent. I'm not saying that I should have, you know, like, well, it had to be me. But it's how it's written. It's how it's written.
It's funny you say that, though, as well, because there'll be people listening to this going, well, hang on, they just sound like Geordies. Like, they won't hear the nuances, which is funny.
Which it smacks out at us, doesn't it? Even people from Sunderland, you know, and people from Hull, people kind of sometimes get me mixed up with that. And I'm like, absolutely not. Like, it's so different. So yeah, it was the dialect, and it was understanding the landscape of what you were talking about, of comprehensive skills in the Northeast, of the kind of breadth of what you discussed, the poverty in some sense that is quite rife there, but also the ambition and the kindness of the people. I'm very proud of being from the Northeast, so you've got all that in there. You don't leave anything out. You say it how it is, and I just thought, like, what a beautiful kind of song to where we come from.
Oh, you're making me feel emotional again. I have to tell you, like, to everyone listening to this, when I first heard you record it as well, when I popped in to listen to it, I literally started crying.
Yeah.
It's really, but yeah, I know it's one of those, it's a project though that I have literally like had in my head for years. So, you know, for a long time working on BBC Breakfast and being like the person everyone referred to as, oh, it's the Northern girl of breakfast.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
like everyone always said that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like, it's a funny life when you go into you'll know this, like when you suddenly be going to a world where people know who you are, but they don't really know where they've seen you, or you know, they're trying
they
to
stare
figure
at you
out
a little bit too long, and they're like,
where do I know her from?
Yeah,
Is that
exactly.
Sandra from Accounts?
There you go. Yeah.
That type of thing. And so, but then doing BBC Breakfast, it was just this funny world of like being familiar to so many people, but also living in a world where you're on such a massive stage, because millions of people watched every day, and it being quite exposing, both in terms of like what you said on telly and how powerful it was and the impact it could have.
Yeah.
But also everyone, I always assumed there'd be loads of security, there'd be loads of people around you. And there isn't. It literally, in all those fields and factories and everywhere else, I stood at 6 o'clock in the morning going, morning, everyone.
Yeah.
It was just me and like one or two other people.
Camera and the sound or whatever.
And so I always used to think about the vulnerability of the situation.
So is this where the idea came from then? Is this, so tell me about that. Like,
so I used to just sit on broadcasts all the time, like with my team, and you worked with a different crew everywhere you went. So wherever I was sent geographically, there'd be a different camera person, or there'd be a different, like, you know, team engineer or whatever, but there'd always only be like 3 of you normally, or 3 or 4 of you. And I just used to, and I was massive into crime fiction. I always have been. I just love like Harlan Coben and Lisa Jewell, and I just obsess over all their work. And I always used to listen to them at talks and things. And I loved the Harlan Coben what if of a situation. So, you know, put yourself in a domestic situation or whatever, and then think, what if this
like
happened?
Spin it. And
And so that's what I used to do. I used to sit like with my mates who I was working with and go, what if this broadcast got hijacked? Like, what would we do?
And
everyone's response was different depending on what was going on in their life. Like, some of them would be like, oh my God, I'd totally run and just leave you to it. And so
nice,
I'd be like, oh, cheers. But then, and I just used to kind of collect all these thoughts, and I used to kind of write stuff down, not because I ever thought I was going to write a book, but just because I was interested. And then I started to think, what if it wasn't a hijack, as in someone like grabbed me around the head and said, do as I say, or she gets it. What if it's more subtle than that, and it's actually, you know, the earpiece, because everyone always asks me about the earpiece you have in when you work it, so when you do live telly.
Well, I came on your show when I was promoting Pound Poms, and I remember watching you between when they'd cut to like a segment or something. I could see you were doing like 10 things at once, but you were listening to somebody, but then you could have a conversation with us, but then you had like cards and stuff. I thought that was fascinating how you could do all that. So I see what you're saying. So you use that,
I know everyone always asks about that. They always say, how do you listen and listen to the person you're interviewing? So it is a bit like, and I you know, as you just said, I explain this in the book, it's like you are listening to the person you're talking to, but you're also half listening to the conversation on the table next to you. It's like that.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah,
it would drive me mad.
But I suppose it. But I used to, and I just used to be in these situations though where I'd think, what if someone started telling me what to say in my earpiece? And you'd get an element of that anyway. The boss might say, ask her about whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And sometimes you listen and sometimes you don't. But depending if it's a good question. But and then I just used to, and I loved that concept. And then, to be honest, the reason of the hijack changed as I wrote it. Like there's some characters, like the character of Harriet, I hadn't even thought of her when I was writing it. She just like walked into the room. I just needed someone to be the head teacher.
Yeah,
and then I was like,
actually,
she feels like she kind of, and I've heard like Anne Cleeves talk about this with Vera and Brenda Blethyn, how Vera just walked in, she burst through the church doors, and then that's the first time Anne Cleeves met her, even though she created her. And I thought, oh God, I finally get it. Like this character Harriet is just like all my favourite women rolled into one.
Yeah. She's amazing. She is amazing.
Who was your favourite character to voice?
This is tricky. I really liked Ollie because I thought his journey was, I mean, it's, you know, heartbreaking. And I thought he represents hope, and he's still, despite what happens, obviously this is after everyone's read this, so I'm not going to spoil anything. He, even after his death, he still represents hope. Yeah. So I just find his outlook and his tenacity, even though he's sort of, he has to find his confidence. Yeah. And he has to sort of believe in himself and the things he goes through, and you know, the way you write, it's, I mean, obviously it's a book, right? So we're visualizing, we're there and we're using our imaginations, but it's the reactions that I would feel, how you wrote that character, so visceral. And, you know, not just heartbreaking. I love CJ and Ollie's relationship. It's hilarious. I mean, to a point, all of them, even voicing the Chancellor, who I absolutely hate, you know, you've got to give a breadth of character, otherwise the story it's not interesting, right? But I think personally, I mean, I loved Rose as well. I loved it from sort of her head, and I loved how she was like, you know, I like the energy of Rose a lot. But I think the character that's sort of closest to me is probably Ollie. Yeah. The one that made a big impact on me, you know.
Yeah, it was funny actually creating Ollie, because he's like, to me, he's like loads of kids that I grew up with, and probably you grew up with as well. Like, and even probably a bit of me in a way. Yeah, totally. You know, being a bit different, like Ollie being interested in politics because someone came into school. Like, I had that experience where it was actually like a journalist, a local BBC journalist, who come into school, and I was like, oh, and I'd never ever thought that I would ever become that person, because I just thought, that's not me. I'll never get there. I don't have the right voice. I don't sound blah blah blah
with acting.
So there's a bit of me and Ollie, but also a bit of that. I see it all the time, and you will, like, just in so many parts of the country where there is these pockets of this kind of hidden deprivation. Yeah. But worse than that, it's like people who just have lost any ambition or a chance to be given inspiration. You know, that could really lift so many people out of
they feel shut out, I think. And I think, like, you know, the people the most that we want to give that inspiration to are young people. Yeah, so I just think it's a really important part of the book for so many reasons. So that's that's definitely why I kind of resonate with him.
Yeah.
You know.
The other thing that I love that you've done in the book is just like, because obviously when I'm writing the different characters, I wanted to do like just that little subtle difference between them in terms of
where they're from and status and all of that.
And what was that like, doing that, you know, the Arabella or whatever, and being
I think status is really important because, you know, it is a fact of life. Like, we can pretend that things are much more kind of equal now, and in some ways they are, and in a lot of ways they aren't. And I think status is really important to highlight in any story, whether that's on telly, in film, at the theatre, or in books. So for me, it was important to and you know, we talked about this. It's not stereotype and it's not caricature. It's giving an insight into the sort of the shoes these people have walked in. And you set it up beautifully by telling us where they're from and what they've done. But there's got to be it has to come alive.
Yeah.
And I think what's really important is making that separation between arguably what you would call, you know, the characters that perhaps are from the north, and then the characters that are working, and they might not be from the south, but they're working in the south, you know, in Westminster and stuff. I found that distinction quite important in order to kind of make sense of the story. And because I come from that world, I come from a working class northern background, I see it. So I know it exists, and I know it's real. So it was very important for me to show that.
Did you notice that I did a fictional place as the place which is where Ollie and Ollie's school is? So I actually made that place up, Newton Banks.
Yeah.
And I did that on purpose because I hated the fact growing up. Well, actually not growing up because I didn't notice it at the time, but later on in life, that where we grew up was given this tag as being poor and all this. And so I purposefully made up the name of the place so that I wasn't saying that place is poor and has all these problems and blah, blah, blah.
Exactly.
Because I just think it doesn't help anyone to get that label.
No, it doesn't. But doing it in our accent is I suppose, giving it a bit of context. But without going...
It's there.
Yes, so, yeah, it's... I agree with you on that one. There definitely was a feeling of... and when I went to drama school, I did feel very much like, oh, I come from that part of the country where, you know, the sort of imposter syndrome, which is crazy, really, because I was so encouraged up north, whether that would be the acting or the sport. I did a lot of football, played for a girls' team in Acclaimed.
Oh, brilliant.
So encouraged, you know. And we kind of... You know, you have that energy as a young person, and then it only takes one. I went down to the National Youth Theatre to do 2 weeks course there when I was 16, and I was acutely aware then, oh, okay, I'm not like these kids. I don't come from, you know, the school, bless them, paid for me to go down, and I just felt I was very aware that I came from a different world.
I think that is not just a northern thing. I think because that's the other thing I don't want it to be like north-south.
No, absolutely.
And it's a more like outside of the bubble in which the powerful live, which is this media and political bubble. Yeah. It's anyone outside of that.
Yeah, that doesn't have
like
to just sound like us. It sounds like anyone that isn't in that bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, like, I know obviously given I'm northern and you're voicing it in a northern voice, it's still, I hope that when people have listened to this, they've heard not just the north-south thing. It's about that political and media bubble that seems to just rule everything in life and tells us how we should live and also tells us how we should think and everything else. It's, if you're outside of that, you have a very different experience than the people who are in it.
Which the majority of us are outside of that, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it's quite a small group.
Yeah, and I guess the other thing as well, like humour was really important to me. Because don't you find that no matter who you are, what you are, you use humour quite a lot to get through things that are tough, don't you? Like, I think that kind of dark humour is...
I think, like, what makes some of the best comedy work on telly and some of our best sitcoms over the years is there's always been an element of the unbearable going on underneath.
Yeah.
And I think British people in particular do that kind of comedy and trying to make light of it and stick the kettle on humour. It's because it's so unbearable underneath. And actually, that's... As humans, we recognise that, you know what I mean? We go, you know, we're laughing, they drop a bomb, and you're like, oh, it's so uncomfortable. And that's what makes it good, because it's relatable, you know.
Yeah. For you then, like if you're preparing for like the audiobook, how is that different to when you're preparing for telly? Because the thing about you at the minute is you're on every big show, you know,
it's weird.
Adolescence, like
imposter syndrome.
No, exactly. Yeah, don't have that. You deserve to be there. You're brilliant. You know, obviously Adolescence, 10 Pound Poms.
Yeah.
You know, you've done that Star Wars series
Andor,
as well, Andor. You
yeah.
know, you're like, so what?
I'm having a moment, let's say that.
You're having more than a moment. This is your
I don't know how
career.
to take a compliment.
I know you don't. You're doing
rubbish.
that thing I do as well, where you go, you just self-deprecate.
Just smile and go, yeah, nice, yeah.
So tell me about how you prepare then for like telly stuff, and how is it different for this? And
I think like with audiobook, you've got to be aware that you are also narrating. And I suppose it's the same. The point I'm trying to make is I have to not do too much so that the audience listening have space to hear and create themselves. If I really smack it to them, it's not leaving room for them to imagine it, right?
Oh my God, that's so smart. I hadn't even thought of that.
It's interesting. So like on telly or in film or even on stage to a point, actually, you try not to show, because if I show you I'm upset, instead of just feeling I'm upset, then there's nowhere for you to go as an audience member. But if I am just feeling it, and I'm not trying to show you, I'm not trying to cry, I'm not trying to do anything, I am just feeling said emotion, and you just looking at my eyes, you're watching your telly in your living room, you can put every kind of imagined feeling and pain and thought into my eyes, and that's how it works.
Right.
That's how we do it.
It's basically like in a book, which is what, when I was writing this book, I spoke to my mates who were crime writers like Cleeves and Faye McDermott, who were like...
You've got some good mates.
I know I am.
It's done all right there.
But it's that thing of show, not tell. So you're not telling someone you're upset. And I guess what you're saying is you're showing, but you're not showing in that overtly dramatic way. You're
ramming it down.
Yeah, you're just getting it from. So how do you do that in an audiobook?
So when I'm narrating lines that are explaining, said so and so when they walked into the room, I keep it quite. The energy has to sort of stay.
Yeah, like
I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of neutral, but it has to have life in it. Otherwise, it would be boring, right?
Yeah.
So, said Harriet, who knew that so-and-so was so-and-so and so-and-so. But then when it comes into the character, that's where I get more room. But I still have to be careful. So I have to narrate because people want to they want to listen to it and they want to see it. Like I do this when I'm in the house, if I'm cleaning, I'll listen to all my audiobooks while I'm moving. So I want to move around the house, or like I might be hoovering and stuff. And as they're talking to me and telling me what's happening, it's going off in my head and I can see it all.
Yeah.
But if I'm too forceful, nobody wants to listen. And it's the same if I'm like bawling and screaming on screen and I've not earned that reaction, the audience see through it straight away and turn off. Like they just turn straight off.
Then it's like it'd be basically like if I tried to act. If someone said like you're upset, I'd be like
that kind of thing.
You would just do something that'd make us all go, oh my God.
Well, I just go, right, well, what's upsetting me then?
Yeah.
And it's about, it's actually much more about stillness. And I think in that does translate to an audiobook, apart from the fact that I'm actually sat in a studio, sat down still, just sort of zoning in, you know. So I did 3 sessions recording this book. So I started at 10 and then I finished at 5. So they're quite longish days when you're just talking. But you just get really locked in. And if you're interested in the subject, which of course I am, then it becomes pretty, not easy. Easy isn't the word, but you want to get it right.
Yeah. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, of course.
I mean, you have to say that.
Yeah, no, but I actually did. Imagine if it's like, well, it's all right.
Yeah, because I am writing book 2 now, you see.
Well, you've got me number, Steph. You've got me number. Of course, I did enjoy it. I enjoyed, like I said, the characters. I enjoyed seeing our dialect written down. I enjoyed what you put in there and how you kind of, you include so much and you write human beings well, you know? And as an actor, I kind of like that, right? Because that's my job. So, no, I did really enjoy it. I usually like being with a gang and that when I'm working, but I actually really enjoyed being in that studio on my own. I obviously had direct a lovely pair and sat in a booth, but you know, we could only communicate via headphones and stuff. He wasn't sat near me, so there was something quite, I don't know, quite calming about it.
Yeah. It's funny that point you make as well about the kind of humans, because I literally just analyse people all the time. I am that nosy person. I think that's why I'm a journalist.
But I think that's why you're a good journalist, because you see, you can see all things. The time. Yeah.
I'm just like, don't ever have a conversation near me that you don't want other people to be told, because
fair. I mean,
I'll be
fair.
like, well, Faye said this.
Well, the thing is, Faye said, yeah, that's good to know, actually. I'm joking.
Yeah. Faye, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks everyone who's been listening. Oh, hang on a minute. Someone's just talking to me in my earpiece.
Oh
my God, we've been hijacked. Da, da, da. Just kidding. Thank you everyone for listening. Book 2 coming soon. I just need to finish writing it. But seriously, everyone who's listened to this and watch this video as well, like, thank you, because do you know what? I genuinely never thought I would be able to write a book. And you know, it's a story, it's a plot, it's characters, it's twists that I've been carrying with me for years and years and years, and now to just have them talking to you via the medium of Faye Marsay is just like a dream come true. So thank you. We're not going to get emotional, because we don't do that. We need to just slag each other off.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we need to take the mick out of each other after this. Lovely, nice one. Cheers for having us.
Yeah, bye then.
Nice one. See you then. Ta-ra.